You are obviously keen to be seen as the tax-reducing Chancellor, but do you accept that the tax burden is now up?
Yes, well, good morning. I think, first of all, to put it in context, you have to remember I was also the Chancellor who had to oversee what happened during the pandemic. That's the first time that's happened in 100 years. We had the biggest economic shock in 300 years, and borrowing spiraled up to levels we haven't seen since World War II. I had to introduce things like furlough. So that's the context for all the actions that I've had to take. But I know families are struggling right now with the cost of living, which is why yesterday I announced a tax plan which delivers the biggest net cut in personal taxes in over a quarter of a century, cutting fuel duty 5 pence a litre, raising national insurance thresholds, giving 30 million workers a tax saving, with typical workers saving £330, and cutting income tax for the first time in 16 years, putting more money in people's pockets. So whilst I can't solve every problem, and I've always been honest with people about that, where I can make a difference, of course that's what I want to do. And I think the plan that we announced yesterday will do exactly that and support hard-working British families.
But are you being honest? You know, when you're talking about tax cuts, but the fact is that the overall burden of taxes is going to reach the highest level since the late 1940s in the next couple of years. Taxes are going to be higher than they have ever been.
And that is a reflection of two things. First and foremost, the fact that we've experienced, as I said, a pandemic. That was a pretty exceptional episode in our country's history. Borrowing spiraled up to levels we haven't seen since the Second World War, biggest economic shock in over 300 years. And had to introduce interventions like furlough. I think most people will understand that an exceptional experience like that probably does lead to an exceptional response, and that's what we're now grappling with, the aftermath of COVID. But also, we are continuing to invest in public services, and I think that's what your viewers and people want us to be able to do as well, particularly and most importantly the NHS and social care, getting on with tackling the backlog there, pulling more police officers on the street, putting more money into our classrooms. Those are all the things the government is doing. We're seeing very strong investment in public services over this Parliament, and that, of course, needs to be paid for.
But there are those who will say that what you did yesterday didn't go far enough and didn't actually help the very poorest in society. There's no increase in universal credit, there's no increase in pensions, no increase in disability benefit. The very poorest in society do not earn enough to benefit from the announcements that you made yesterday, do they? They are not going to benefit from an increased national insurance threshold or a 1% tax cut because they just simply don't earn enough. And for those people, there was nothing yesterday.
Well, they actually are my priority, which is why we started our action to help them in the autumn. In my autumn budget, we made the operation of universal credit more generous so that people can keep more of what they earn, especially those people that you're talking about on low incomes. They will also benefit, and that what we did then was a £2 billion tax cut for about 2 million low earners. They will also disproportionately benefit from the significant increase in the national living wage that's just about to come in. It's going to go up 6.6%. Now, the combination of all these things means that, for example, let's take a single mother with 2 children, renting, working full-time on the national living wage, so a low earner, as you described. That mother is going to be £1,600 a year better off as a result of all these decisions, and it's right that we are focusing attention on them, but I do believe the policies that we're putting in place will help those people on low incomes disproportionately, in fact.
That's what you believe, but it's not what other people who've examined what you've set out yesterday believe. You know, the Resolution Foundation says that 2/3 of the benefits you announced yesterday will help only the top 50%, tax cuts for middle and top earners. Only 1 in 3 of the pounds that's going to be saved goes to the least well-off. And you look at what you've really flagged up to us today about fuel duty going down 5 pence a litre. That only helps if you've got a car. 1/3 of the population don't have access to a car. It just seems to add to the feeling that maybe you're not really in touch with the hard reality of lots of people's lives.
Actually, when I go out and about talking to people, fuel duty is one of the things that is raised most often with me because the vast majority of people in this country do use their cars to get around, particularly those in rural areas, particularly those on lower incomes for whom petrol bills are a much larger part of their income. So this is something actually that people did want us to take.
We've got a lovely picture of you filling up your car yesterday.
If I could just finish... If I could just finish answering the question, and actually talking to the person then who I was doing that with, it, they use their car every day to get to work. They noticed, obviously, petrol prices going up. They were appreciative of the fact that we're cutting fuel duty. It does demonstrate we're on the side of people, accepting that we can't solve every problem or fully make up for some of the increase in petrol prices. But with regard to low earners, and you mentioned one think tank, that also other think tanks, and including the one that you mentioned, but the Independent Institute of Fiscal Studies, for example, has specifically described what we did on national insurance thresholds as the best way through the tax system to help those on low incomes and middle incomes. Because I think the increase in national insurance thresholds that we put in place yesterday, which will come into effect in July, is particularly well targeted to help those on lower middle incomes. It will provide a tax cut for 30 million workers, and it's worth, for a typical employee, about £330 a year. So it does demonstrate we're on the side of hard-working British people. That's what this government is about, and that's what I'm delivering.
The IFS may suggest that you may be slightly representing them. I have a quote from their director, Paul Johnson, yesterday. He says, "What really stands out today is what's missing. He has done nothing more for those dependent on benefits, the very poorest, beside a small amount of extra cash for local authorities. Their benefits will rise by just 3.1% for the coming financial year. The cost of living could well rise by 10%. So the IFS are not wholeheartedly welcoming what you announced yesterday, it has to be said. Let's look at that picture of you filling up your car. You're looking very jolly. It's a gorgeous sunny day yesterday, wasn't it? Most people, when they fill up their car these days, watch the pounds going up, going up, going up. It struck me that you weren't even looking at how much it costs to fill up your car. Do you fill it up very often?
Well, actually, I was having a conversation with a person that I was talking to at the same time as filling it up, and we were filling it up, and I was keeping an eye on the pounds, and actually it was about £30 and 1 pence, because I didn't quite get to finish it in the right place. So yes, I was keeping an eye on it. But I think you were just having a conversation about
filling up. You were just filling about a quarter of a tank in.
Well, that's what was required. But on 1 second ago you were saying that doing something on fuel duty isn't particularly valuable, and now we're having conversations saying that it is. I think actually it is. It's the biggest ever cut.
I'm not saying that fuel duty isn't valuable. I'm just saying that it strikes me that you're not somebody who often looks at filling up their car.
And I think it will make a difference to people. I mean, my wife and I have a Volkswagen Golf, and actually she's filled it up, as I was saying the other week, and it is going up. Of course we know it's going up, and that's why we took action yesterday to try and make a difference there, with the biggest ever cut in fuel duty that we've seen at 5 pence a litre. And I'm really glad, actually, to see retailers passing that on very quickly. And, I hope that happens across the industry. Something I called for yesterday. And I think Asda and Sainsbury's in particular were quick out of the block saying that they were doing that. And I'm grateful to them for doing that, so that your viewers, we can all benefit from that fuel duty cut as quickly as possible.
But there are those who will look at you and say that you aren't really in touch with real people's lives. I mean, you've had a very lucky and privileged life, and I know you've talked about the sacrifices your parents made to send you to an excellent school. But I would suggest that you've never had to worry about making a fiver last till the end of the week. And there are a lot of people who are looking at what was announced yesterday, and we're talking to one of them just after 8 o'clock, a man called Barry, who's a carer for 2 children who have got health issues. His wife's a care worker. And there was nothing there yesterday, they say, for them that will make their lives any easier. And they're looking at with horror at the idea that inflation could go up to as much as 10%.
Well, this has been put to me many times, and what I say is judge me by my actions. I think people can see how I've acted over the last couple of years as our country went through a very difficult period. And I think I demonstrated that I am standing by British people when we go through difficult things. I introduced things like furlough. I helped this country get through a pandemic. And partly because of the actions that I took, the economy is in a much stronger place than anyone expected now, with more people on payroll than we had before the pandemic, unemployment back down to the record low levels we saw before the crisis. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because of the policies that we put in place. And it's because of that that we can now help people to weather some of the challenges ahead, accepting, of course, as I've said, We can't solve every problem. I wish I could, and that's the toughest part of this job, not being able to do everything that people want you to do. But where I can make a difference, of course, that's what I'm doing. And again, you talk about Barry and his family. Obviously, you can't get into everyone's individual circumstances, but I do think families will benefit from the fuel duty cut we announced yesterday, because many people are reliant on their cars. That will help. Millions of people, tens of millions of people, will benefit from the increase in national insurance thresholds. That's going to save people £330 a year. They'll benefit from the increase in the national living wage. They'll benefit from the increased generosity of the universal credit taper. They'll benefit from the extra money that we're giving councils to help those most in need. And they will benefit from the income tax cut that's coming down the line. So, look, there's a range of things we're doing, all of which demonstrate we are on the side of hard-working British families, and that's what we will continue to do.
As you say. Well, the Prime Minister has just made a statement. Apparently he said we can do more to stop Putin from using his gold reserves. What should we be doing?
I'd say, look, I'm not sure of the context of exactly what the Prime Minister has said. So obviously, I'm talking to you, but what I would say is, he's taken a lead and deserves enormous credit for galvanising international opinion to deliver a strong message.
He must have asked your opinion as the Chancellor about the gold reserves, though.
Well, well, there's lots of things we're doing about the central bank, and I assume that's what he's talking about. And we've taken a leading role in sanctioning Russia, particularly economic and financial sanctions. I outlined those yesterday in Parliament. They are having an impact, and people should feel reassured that what we are doing is having an impact. The Russian ruble has plummeted to record lows. The Moscow Stock Exchange has been essentially closed for a month, and the Russian central bank has had to double interest rates to 20% in Russia. So all the various things we're doing are having an impact, and as the Prime Minister said, we will continue to maintain pressure on Russia.
You mentioned that, and you mentioned the pressure on Russia. It's been reported that you've got family links to Russia, that your wife apparently has a stake in the Indian IT consultancy firm Infosys. They operate in Moscow. They have an office there. They have a delivery office there. They've got a connection to the Alpha Bank in Moscow. Are you giving advice to others that you're not following in your own home?
That's not. I'm an elected politician, and I'm here to talk to you about what I'm responsible for. My wife is not.
She is not, but equally, if you as a country, we are asking taxpayers to fund the UK's support for Ukraine. We're asking people in the UK to give their homes up to Ukrainian refugees, whereas it appears your family potentially could be benefiting from Putin's regime.
No, I don't think that's the case. And as I said, the operations of all companies are up to them. We've put in place significant sanctions, and all the companies that we are responsible for are following those, as they rightly should, sending a very strong message to Putin's aggression.
Do you know if Infosys is?
I have absolutely no idea, because I have nothing to do with that company.
Okay. In terms of what the Prime Minister is saying, he is saying that we could be doing more to stop Putin. What would you like to see the British government doing more to stop Putin, and where will that money come from? We've talked about a new support package for Ukrainian forces, 6,000 more anti-tank missiles. Is this going to come from our existing defence budget?
Also, we knew that Russia was a particular threat to our security because in something called the Integrated Review, which was done a little while ago, it was named very specifically as a big threat, and that's why we increased our defence budget by record amounts, £24 billion over the 4-year period. It's the biggest increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War, in reflection of the new threats that we face, and it's because of that extra investment in defence that we're able to provide support to our allies like Ukraine at this difficult time, and we know that is making a difference to their ability to withstand Russian aggression, and I hope people are proud of the contribution that the British state and armed forces are playing.
Chancellor Rishi Sunak, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.